Now we're going to talk about mosque lamps. Now this is a long tradition that we see in Islam. Often these are glass and highly decorative. And they're really common to donate on a family or individual's behalf to the mosque. Many mosques actually have mismatched mosque lamps because you have families contributing to 1, 2, 4 smaller sets. In this case, they all match. And the traditional mosque lamp contains either oil or some form of candles, so they actually will be lowered. In this case, this is a more modern version from a dome-type mosque in Jordan, but here's a more traditional series of mosque lamps. Now, all of these would be lowered twice a day to light them. And here's the best depiction I can find of that. It's not something that we see a lot of images of. Now, despite their fragile nature, many of these mosque lamps survive because of the reverence that they have for them. They're also generally out of the way, so when they're lowering the lamps to light them, they don't lower them to the floor. Just like today, you would find chandeliers, for example, for churches much more easily than you might find statuary that would be on floor level where people can touch it. But here we're actually looking at a specific set. And this is one of 2 mosque lamps made for a court official. And these would be hung by a chain from the ceiling. Those are, we see the handles around, and the chains would run through that handle, or a rope would run through that handle, and then chains on either side. The shape is very typical for the period when we're dealing with the 14th century. We see a conical neck, a very wide body, and 6 vertical handles with a tall foot. The enamel decoration actually contains the official's emblem, which is an eagle over a cup. And we actually see that right here. So when we look at this, in this case, this is going to be a glass lamp. And the glass is then coated in enamel. So basically, this is powdered glass that's mixed with water or other binders. And then the whole thing is fired to melt it onto the surface. The enamel is used to write his name, his titles, and provide verses from the Quran, in this case comparing God's light to the light of the lamp. You'll also notice, because this is 14th century glasswork, these are not perfectly level. These are not perfect examples like we would expect today. Of course, these are hand-blown and handmade, so that is not all that unusual. And the idea of putting your name on something that you donate to a religious structure is not unusual either. We've seen that going back as far as the Sumerians, and we see that in Western churches and Buddhist temples. We see it all over the place. So it's actually really common. People like the idea of being remembered, and particularly being remembered as a good person. And then, of course, there's the religious connotations that go with that. The verse and name would have been illuminated when lit. So it's done in a lighter enamel so that the light will penetrate that much more quickly than it does other elements of the lamp. So it's not a shadow piece. It's not something that's going to cast this person's name and titles on the wall, but it will make them quite visible if you happen to be standing beneath it, or if you happen to be in the mosque looking at the lamp. So really, really common. And these lamps today tend to find themselves in private collections as well as museums. So we see them continue to be preserved, showing sort of an element of the reverence that Islam has for these relics of the mosques.